working, that's why I am. Better move that link cable, bro, you can't twang. There ain't no fainting round here, fam, my gangs. I will straight for your HP, that's why they call man. Yo, talking like say you're gonna sky me. When I draw for the ball, you be like, why me? Trust me, cuz, one by one.
What's going on, guys? So we're back today and we're going to be going over the N52 Reliability 2020. This is simply because you guys would have known I did the video in 2019. And I just want to go over a couple of things on my car to show you how reliable these cars still can be in 2020 of this year, and how you can keep them running reliable for year after year, making sure you use the correct parts and doing the preservative maintenance that needs to be done on these cars before you consider driving them for mega miles, expecting them to just last you and not have to put any kind of work into them. So let's go over and I'm going to show you what you need to replace on this engine when you first get it, and let's see if it's still reliable in 2020 and how good of a car it still makes, and if it's worth to buy the N52 engine. So guys, here we are, another year with the N52 engine, and as you guys would know, I started the YouTube channel with this car and we have done extremely well with the subs, with the amount of people it's helped, and with just this engine alone. And now we're in another year and I want to show you guys how reliable these engines are and how reliable they can be year after year, providing you put the work and the maintenance into these engines. They're very solid engines and very capable engines and extremely good on power and can really deliver providing you look after it. So we're going to go over all the things that commonly break on these and work out the prices on each individual part to let you guys know if it's still reliable. So guys, the first part on these cars that every N52 engine suffer with is this right here, the oil filter housing gasket. Now, as you guys know, it splits between the cracks here where it bolts to the head itself of the engine, and it ends up leaking coolant all down your block down here, and you'll end up seeing all down the side of the block at the down here behind your underneath your manifold that oil and coolant will be leaking down there, and you'll also notice extreme coolant loss constantly when you drive the car. Now, it doesn't leak too severe, but it can do, and what will end up happening is you'll notice when you've got a loss of coolant and a loss of oil as well, especially the oil cooler, if you guys have that fitted, which I know a lot of you don't. What that does, this is the most catastrophic part, when that leaks due to heat. This one, as you see here, is direct onto the belts. So as you guys will see here, the cooler housing gasket sits between there. There's 3 bolts, they're 10mm, one here, and one underneath in the middle that you've got to take out to release this. And as you see, it leaks straight down onto the pipes itself, the coolant pipes, and also the belts, which ends up derailing the belts and destroying the engine because the belt ends up getting sucked into the sump. Now, my best advice would be to replace this immediately if you buy any N52 to make sure it's been done. I do recommend using the BMW dealer part. Do not use the cheap £5 or $5 part that you can find on Amazon. The part is not expensive at all, and it's only about £35 from the dealer for both gaskets, and you will save yourself a lot of time and a lot of money, because the Chinese ones will rock you again after 10k and you're back doing it. I've known people who's been doing it over 50 times because they're buying the cheap gaskets. They don't last and they end up back doing the same job 50 times over. Use the correct one and it will last 100k like the original one did. That's one job you need to do. It's very easy to do. So you just want to release this one right down here. As you'll see, that silver little bolt down here, I don't know if you can see properly. You'll be able to see that bolt right down there. That one, this one right here, and also there's one situated right down there underneath, which you need to use an 8mm spanner to get to. Apart from that, these cars are reliable, providing you change that, so it can't derail your belts. The next one, if your oil filter housing gasket has been leaking, and it has leaked, I would advise changing the belts and the tensioner down there. You can pick the tensioners up for about 20 quid, which is very cheap, and they are called inner ones. The idler pulleys as well, and also the belts are extremely cheap. You can get it all for about 40 quid, and it's very cheap now. You can also replace that, and I would advise doing that, especially if your oil filter housing gasket has been leaking, just to secure it, because you've got to remember the tensioner itself on this car is an aluminium bolt, and that can end up breaking out, especially if it's not torqued right, and end up derailing your whole belts as well. So you want to make sure you change that over. So the next one, guys, as you'll see right there, is the Valvetronic solenoids. Now, you guys know, I've told you time and time again, only use genuine BMW dealer solenoids. because what will happen is you'll buy the Chinese ones like many people do, and you end up not curing any of your faults. You end up with the same problems because the Chinese ones cannot and will not fluctuate at the same speed as originals. Now in the US, you get a lot of different makes, and I tell a lot of people this in the US, the reason that is because what China's doing is they're paying high-tech companies to use their name on the products, which they're allowed, providing they pay the name. They have to pay for the licensing to be able to sell the parts to you guys. Now, if them parts were so good, we would have all them over here. The reason we don't have them in the UK is because they can't pass the strict quality control procedure. Now, if you guys don't know, quality control is basically a stamp, like a signature, which people have to sign to say that they're authorising that a part is fit for purchase and fit to be on any kind of machine part. Now, if that part fails and causes any kind of damage or doesn't work as intended, the person who ever signed that off saying it's worthy and it passes all the tests will be sacked from their job. That's why they won't even allow it in this country, for that reason. So don't be fooled thinking you're buying a good brand. You can get now for about £280. So they're not expensive now, and they've come really down on price. So that's a really good thing for us N52 guys compared to the price they used to be at 380 for both of them from the dealer. So that's why I recommend going to buy them from BMW dealer only. The next one on these guys is the valve cover gasket. I changed this 30,000 miles ago, as I did with the oil filter housing gasket right here, as I did with the solenoids as well, and I changed all the gaskets along here on the valve cover. Now, these are very reliable. Since I've changed it, I've had no leaks. I changed all the aluminium bolts, which are all along here, as you'll see. These bolts need to be changed as well because they're torqued to yield, and they only can be torqued down once. So you want to make sure you change them. Don't try and reuse them because they can easily snap in the head, then you'll be trying to get them out. So make sure you do change them bolts over. Altogether, now you can get that all for a ring 60 quid, Victor Reigns gasket, and the bolts were around 20 quid. It's worth changing all of that for peace of mind because you're going to take it off anyway. So just put on new bolts, a new valve cover, and make sure you do it. Since I've done that, I've had no issues, no oil leaks. Another one you're going to want to replace is obviously your Valvetronic Seal, which, as you guys know, sits under here on the valve cover itself. They leak and they do go bad, and when they leak, they cause oil to go into your spark plug holes. You don't want that, because then what happens is when you go to change the ignition coil, what happens when the oil leaks out the Valvetronic Seal, it ends up getting into your ignition coils and destroying your ignition coils. Then when you take them out and then you try and change the spark plugs, all the oil drops into the chambers. Now you guys can watch my video on how to clean that, but it is a common problem, and I would strongly suggest making sure your Valvetronic Seal ain't leaking if you've never touched anything on the car. The Valvetronic Seal, if that goes, as I said, you can replace that for, I think it's around £22 still. So you can get a new one of them and replace it, and they do leak oil, so my best advice would be to change that over. The next one is the eccentric shaft, which sits above here as well on the engine cover. They do go bad. I've not known them to go bad. It hasn't gone bad on this one, but when these engines were first released, they went bad a lot, and they sit right up here. The eccentric little plug gets oil in it, and it can damage the eccentric shaft, and it's needed to advance this valve for the Valvetronic and for the whole Vanos system to work perfectly. It's a big job, and if it does go bad after you've replaced the valve cover, you'll have to take the valve cover back off to do it again. You also have to be careful that the bolts don't drop into the engine when you're doing it, because they're inside the engine and it connects up. But it is quite an easy job, providing you know what to do. The eccentric shaft seal as well, when you take the valve cover off, make sure you replace it. They are a bitch to get out, but they do come out. Just need to tap them out. The eccentric shaft sensor, if that goes bad, that's still around 280 to 300 pounds just for that sensor. So it is an expensive part, but I'd advise changing it to be on the safe side, truly, because you're going to take the valve cover off, and if that goes when you put the cover back on, you're going to have no end of problems. Another problem a lot of people do when they take this valve cover off, they end up mixing up the oxygen sensors. I've seen this a lot of times. A lot of guys are going to comment on this because they know who they are, who I've helped out. Even Nathan done the same thing on his N52 when I met him. When they take the valve cover off on this engine, they unplug the lambda sensors. They end up plugging them back up wrong to the wrong sensors, which causes a rough idle on the car. Now, a lot of you, if you've done that and you've just replaced your valve cover and now you've got a rough idle, make sure your lambda sensors are correct, because what will happen is the idle will be all over the place, the car will feel running rough, it'll be vibrating, and that can be the cause of your lambda sensors not plugged in correctly. The next one on these guys, as you'll see right down here, the water pump and thermostat. Now, you guys know they do give up whenever they tend to feel like it. You've got no say over it, and when they go out, the parts ain't that expensive now. Thermostat and water pump for these cars can be had for about £280, and it's not a hard job on these cars at all, especially on the E60, but on the E90s and the 1 Series, these are extremely hard cars to do because there's little to no space, and that's the same for the X-Size as well models, because you've got all the drive shafts in the way. and the subframe, everything's in the way, so it's very hard to do, but it is doable. Do not think it's not. And if you do it, it will save you another 100,000 miles, because what happens is with these, as you guys know, it's got no temperature gauge. It will put the car into limp mode if the coolant pump fails, and you remember drive, it will just tell you to pull over. You have to see a coolant light, and that'll be it. And that's the reason BMW did that. They didn't put a thermostat because it's got the light. If it comes on, it restricts the car and puts it into limp mode, so you can't drive fast, so you can't overheat the engine. So I prefer that than a temperature, because the temperature gauge you can't control. So this is the reason, guys, why they got rid of the thermostat, because a thermostat is more dangerous the way they worked it out. Because you guys should know, if you've ever had an overheating car before, by the time it overheats, if everything's burst, the temperature is just going to rise, and just constantly go into the red regardless of what you do, and even if you shut the engine off, the engine will be destroyed. Where with these engines, where they've got a light on them, it restricts all power, and the coolant pump, it tries and keeps spinning to cool the engine while you turn it off even in limp mode, so it doesn't destroy the engine. So you guys have to be aware of that. That's the reason why BMW fitted it. The electric pumps do go out, so does the thermostat, and make sure you change them, because they do go, and nobody knows when they're going to fail. They just fail. The best thing to do is scan the car, and it usually tells you a fault code, what fault code it's got. And if it's got a fault code for water pump deviation, which is usually it's slowing down the propellers inside, go ahead and change that, because that can be catastrophic for your engine as well if it fails, especially on the magnesium block, because it will tear the bolts out from in the top. Now if you take off the valve cover, you'll notice two little bolts on the top here, two big bolts which pull the head down to the block. So you got to remember that they do fail, and they'll pull them bolts out, and then you'll be having to have a new engine. The next one on these guys, which sits right down here as well in the corner, is the Vanos filters. Now as you guys know, they're not expensive to replace now. I replaced mine when I first bought this car. They're around £30–35, but as I say, they're very easy to change. They require just a little torques, and you can get them straight out and change them over. Not hard to change at all, and it's worth changing them. Don't bother cleaning them. It's the same as the Vanos Solenoids. Do not even think of cleaning them. All this cleaning crap is not going to work. My best advice is to make sure you change the Vanos filters. They are cheap to buy, around £25–45. Nothing expensive on them. Change them and be safe than sorry, because as you know, if they clog up, they can cause you rough idle as well, your rough running. They can also cause your car not to start as well. So my best advice is to replace them as well. The next one on this, guys, is your CCV. Now as you guys know, the CCV ruptures on these, and ends up causes too much excess vacuum on the valve cover and pops the valve cover as well. They do rupture and do like to go bad, and can cause serious oil loss, which is right down here, and it can be replaced. The manifold can be off in less than 10 minutes. They're very easy to do. And I would advise, if you're buying an M52, to go and change it. These have to be done, so if you ain't done it on your M52 and you do have one, I would advise going to do it. The ones on these engines have all the different separate hoses with the heaters on them, where on the black valve cover one, as you guys know, will have one hose like a Y shape that goes to here, and one straight up into the valve cover. And that's because you don't have the Disa valve, so there's nothing to connect on this manifold, so that's why you have that. But it's very good maintenance to make sure you do the CCV, because if it ruptures, it will pop your valve cover, and if you can save it, you might get away with saving your valve cover. That's the majority of the case of why they fail the valve covers and pull the bolts out of from the valve cover bolts, because of that reason, because of them blowing. So I would strongly advise going to change the CCV. It all sits down here, all the pipes, and you've got a little ball that sits at the back down here with all the pipes going to it, as well as the pipe that runs up there, as well as all the heater wires, with it's insulated, as you guys know, it's plug in to the connectors. So the CCV, as you guys see, costs still about, I don't know, about £150 from main dealers. Yes, you can pick up cheaper ones on eBay and Amazon for probably around 50 quid, but I would strongly advise to avoid them at all costs because of that reason. If, like I said, if they rupture, they will destroy the valve cover, and they'll also get oil all over to your throttle body inside, and also onto your Disas, which that's usually what destroys the Disas, because what happens is the oil is being sucked into the manifold, which then ends up on the Disa motors and everywhere else. They start leaking into the servo motors. They start leaking into the Disa servo motors and destroy the Disas, because once they get in the motor, that's it, that's your Disa knackered. So make sure you do replace the CCV, because it can cause a lot of issues and expensive issues. The next one on these guys is the Disa Flaps, as you see right here. Now they are still expensive, this one and that one down here. These still cost around $450. There is no rebuild kit. Even if people tell you there isn't. Trust me, these are electronically controlled. By the time you open them up to change the Disa, the motors inside them, they'll be destroyed and not functioning properly, which can end up being catastrophic for your engine, because if you put it back in, they can end up coming apart inside your manifold and getting sucked into the chambers as well and destroying the chambers. So my best advice would be to make sure you go and check them and make sure. The only way you can check them is with ISTA, so be aware of that as well, that you can only check them with ISTA. You will not be able to check them with any other kind of scanner. They will not throw up on a fault code. These don't trigger an engine management light either, so if they are faulty, you would never know. You need to make sure the flap is actually closing and that they're actually operating, they're not got play in them, because what will happen is the pin will end up coming off, sucked into the cylinder, smashed apart and destroying your engine. I've known it many times. This is why you need to check these if you're going to go and buy the first gen N52. They all have them fitted. Make sure you change every single Disa on here and you buy them all together because of that reason. You guys already know, I've took you through, I've got videos up showing you how to check your Disas, how to change them. You guys would have seen me change it many times. These do fail and will fail, and a lot of people don't even notice it. Like when I purchased this car, people didn't notice it either because of that reason. Everyone was going crazy looking for what the fault was on this car because it was low on power, and it was these Disas were causing it, the low down power. And what people were doing, because the Vanos was having to work harder, it abused the Vanos system, which in turn destroyed the solenoids, because the Disas weren't actuating to give the low torque as they're meant to for the intake, for the manifold runners, which, as you guys know, the Disas are used for the manifold runners to give more power. But because they weren't working, the solenoids were over advancing the time and try and keep up with the power that people were trying to press the signal to the DME to get more power, and they're putting their foot flat to the floor. This was the whole cause why the owners got rid of it, until I got it and then just diagnosed it and find out what was the problem. Again, this didn't come up on a normal scanner, that's why nobody could find it. It only come up on ISTA, which I found out where the Valvetronic motors were not functioning properly, and when I ran the test, you could hear the flaps not even engaging, which means they were stuck, and what usually happens is they jam shut very tight and you can't even move the flap. So just make sure that you can take off the manifold, take the Disas out, put them on their connectors and leave them, and then go and start the car, see if they operate, open and close, which that's how you know if they're messed up or not. And usually what will happen is the flap itself will stay half open. If it's staying half open, it means it's knackered. Change it, because it will cause you to lose low down power, can also cause rough idle. They cause a lot of problems on these cars, and like I said, they're not cheap. They're still going about $450 for both of them, and then the dealers, you're looking to probably pay about £800 for the both of them as well. These were used on the N53 as well engine, and they're still used on the E82 125Is, which is the N52 engine. They're still used on quite a lot of cars in the UK, so this is why they're very hard to source, because they go wrong on every car and everyone's going crazy for them to get their power back. So they're hard parts to come across. Just want to note as well, guys, if you guys don't know, we've got the little Pcv heater down there, as you guys will see. You've got the Pcv heater down there, guys. Now, I'm asked this on a frequent basis on the N52. Oh, my Pcv heater recall, this, that, the other. Do yourself a favor, just unplug it and forget about it, like I've done. That's the best way. Do not even go to the dealer for a new one. Just unplug it. It's never used, and it's just a danger to society and danger to your car itself. My best advice would be to unplug that immediately. The ignition coils and the spark plugs. Now, these do fail on this car, and when I bought this car had a sputter like nobody's business. It wasn't throwing no codes. We then diagnosed it as a ignition coil. I now went and changed all 6, and since then it's been perfect. Now, this is why a lot of people end up getting sick and tired of these cars, because they can't diagnose the fault, because some parts do not throw a fault code. Like, for instance, the ignition coils in this wouldn't throw a fault code. It took strong diagnosis and knowing about these cars to be able to diagnose it as the ignition coils. I also changed the spark plugs to the correct ones, as you guys would have seen in my video, to the high spark plugs, as you guys know, which was the newest ones BMW released for this engine, which, if a lot of you guys anyway, you can go and relate that to my video regarding the spark plugs. But this needs the newer ones. They were using a single electrode ones, which you want to get rid of, and make sure you put the 4-prong, which got you guys say was all in the M54 engine. But no, these ones are high power ones that BMW built for this engine, because the other ones were causing a lot of damage and a lot of rough idles to these cars, and that was because of the spark plugs as well as the solenoids, and as well as the update. So that's another thing, guys. If you haven't had your ECUs updated, make sure you get your ECU update to cure any rough idle, because changing the solenoids is not going to cure rough idle fully. What will end up happening if you ain't got the update, it will end up killing your engine again and killing the solenoid. It will end up, if you ain't got the update, it will end up killing your solenoids again. So even replacing them a few months down the line, it will kill your solenoids. Make sure you get the update, because the update has got a system which, when the car first starts, it pulsates them at a higher speed to keep them clean and keep them functioning perfectly as normal, to stop them failing again. Coil ignition coils, guys, on these do fail, and like I say, they're around still £130 for all 6. But my best advice is to replace all 6. Do not replace just the ones that fail, or go for the 4. Replace all 6. That is my best advice. If you guys don't listen to me and you come back with another problem, that is where you guys will end up with problems galore if you don't replace all the parts straight away and just get it always done with to keep these cars reliable. So there you have it, guys. I've just gone over the N52 reliability of 2020. As you guys see, my car is still ultra reliable, still another year, and it still will be. You guys know if we get any problems with this car, we will fix it on the channel to show you guys. any kind of issues, whether that means in me trying to diagnose it to find out what was wrong, we will show you so you guys can always rescue your N52s. Now, as you guys know, the sump gaskets do leak as well, which I forgot to go over in the video. You guys do know that, but it ain't really a major issue. You guys know I've already told you how to repair that by just lifting the engine up and just dropping the bolts a bit and repair it using new bolts and resealing it with a sealant. You guys can also check out my Forte brand that I've got all in my description with all the links if you want to try them products out. That really does help these engines and will stop it burning oil as well if your one's burning oil. I know the N52 BT5 does suffer issues in the B23. They suffer with valve stem seal issues and also oil burning issues, but the Forte products will help and stop that and rectify them issues. I hope you've enjoyed this video, guys. A lot of you have been waiting for this video again after last year's one. My N52 is still running perfect. I hope you guys' engines are still running perfect as well. Let's try and keep these N52s running tip-top condition. As you guys know, in the UK, these cars are very, very rare. There's only like 10% of people driving N52 engines, so it's like very rare here compared to what is in the USA. I do these guys mostly for you guys, and I hope you guys appreciate what I'm doing for you. I try and put out as many N52s as I can to help you guys with all your issues and obviously go over everything we can do. Thank you very much for watching, guys. This is BMW Dr. Dean here as always, and goodbye.